On this episode of The Twisted Realm, the team heads north to the town of Warrenton, Virginia, to investigate one of the town's historic locations for claims of paranormal activity. Built in 1808, our location of interest was used to contain the criminals of the time, from harsh conditions to inhumane treatment, and even the number of hangings that took place in its courtyard. This location has seen its share of death. Join us as we take you inside the walls of the Fauquier History Museum at the old jail. In this world of the unknown, is there a realm between life and death? Join us as we travel up and down the East Coast, researching and investigating many locations with claims of paranormal activity. Gotta get closer than that. Oh, my Lord. Oh. We are believers. Glad to see you.
Good job.
Yay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Hey, Lyle.
Come back down and look at that stuff on the bench there. If you actually touch them, they'll light up for us. We are seekers of the truth.
Hey,
Boom.
Grandpa,
Let me get that thing going.
look at that thing.
We are the Twisted Paranormal Society. And this is the Twisted Realm. Named after the Revolutionary War hero Joseph Warren, the town of Warrenton was established in 1810 in Fauquier County, Virginia. During its early years, the town was frequented by many historical figures, but none more prominent than Confederate General John Singleton Mosby, who frequently raided the town during the Civil War, and would return to make his home where he would then practice law after the war's end. Out of all the structures that bore witness to all these events, the old jail was there for it all. To hear more about the history, let's meet up with Maggie Lovett, who is the curator of the old jail.
So the jail was built in 1808, the first jail, the brick structure. It was 2 cells down, 2 cells up. There's a maximum security and a general population on the main floor, and then upstairs is the women's cell and the debtor's prison. These were used for about 15 years before we actually got sued by the Commonwealth of Virginia because our treatment of prisoners was pretty rough. They had dirt floors, most of the time no bedding or beds at all, 1 bucket for water, 1 bucket for waste. There was rarely ever glass in the windows. The minute books talk about the prisoners frequently breaking through the glass and then having to replace it. And most of the time the prisoners weren't getting fed. We didn't have a jailer on site at that point. We only had a sheriff here in town, and he really only cared about locking you up and taking you to court. He didn't care if you were thirsty, he didn't care if you were hungry, he didn't care if you were sick. So a lot of people did die in those 15 years. And so because of that, we were made to build a new jail in 1823. They finished with that jail, they came back to the first jail and they added on a kitchen with a bedroom above it, and they upgraded it into a jailer's home so that a jailer and his family could move in. His wife was paid separately to feed the prisoners twice a day, and that's how the jail was operated until 1966. So that's about 143 years as a jail complex. We do not know how many executions happened here at the jail. Records were not very precise, and frequently prisoners would actually be lynched. It seems like the residents of Warrenton enjoyed a good lynching. So after executions were made more private, they still kind of broke in, got the prisoner, and hung them somewhere outside of the jail. We know of at least 2 or 3 hangings that did happen here in the jail, however. There was a jailer's wife who was working in the jail one day. She was in the kitchen, and she didn't notice that her skirt had caught in the embers in the fireplace, and because the way fabrics were back then, they catch on fire very quickly, and so the fire kind of engulfed her, and she passed away a few days later upstairs in the bedroom at the jail, because the jailer's bedrooms were above the kitchen. And she would have most likely have been Josephine Patty. That's who we believe was the jailer's wife that this happened to. And she also lost a number of children here in the jail as well from childhood diseases. And her daughter is one of the more frequently encountered child spirits here in the jail. And her name is Josie. November of 2015, I was working here with another coworker. She no longer works with us, but she was downstairs at the front desk, and I was upstairs in our office with my back to the door, just like any usual Saturday. And I had looked up, and I looked out the window, and I noticed it was pretty calm, still day. The trees weren't moving or anything like that. So a few minutes later, I heard the door downstairs swing open as if somebody had pushed with all of their force to force it open, because there's bells on the door and you can hear them really jingle. And then it sounded like somebody was coming up the stairs, and then my office door swung open, and it actually made contact with the bookcase behind it. And then the next thing I knew, it sounded like somebody was walking across the attic, and the only way into the attic would be through our office, into the collection room, and through another door that had a lot of stuff in front of it. So there was really no way that anyone could have come in at any point during the day. And it sounded clear as day, like somebody walking across the floor. And it had such a negative feeling to the energy that had come in that I got up and I went and hid in the bathroom and called my mom, because it's kind of my first instinct was to get away from this feeling, and that was the first time that something very, profound happened in the jail. And the girl that was sitting downstairs, she was also pretty terrified because she looked outside, there was no one on the street, there was no wind, and that was a fairly terrifying experience for both of us.
As a membership drive person coming to sign up, and I told Maggie's mother, who was working the desk at that time, that I had seen different ghosts and if they ever had anything mentioned here, and she told me to come back and talk to Maggie, which I did. And so for the last 3 years, I've been coming here, helping them with their ghost walks throughout Warrenton, through doing the paranormal tours here at the museum. I first saw the woman, Mrs. Patty, the woman who died, the jailer's wife, and saw her as she spun and her dress was on fire in the kitchen. It was sad and tragic to see her go through that, and it seemed like she did it 2 or 3 times over the last 2 years when I've been by here. I've also experienced in the last year or so the woman in white, and that was during a paranormal tour. I had a group of people in the room in the kitchen, and this young woman in 1860s period clothing, very, very pretty young woman, I remember. I thought perhaps she was somebody costumed that I wasn't told about. She came out of the stairway in the kitchen and crossed the room. I told the group that there was a ghost in the room with us. She turned and looked at me, came over, stood in front of me and curtsied, and then walked through the wall.
This is the room we were in several years ago. My group had toured the old jail for a little wine tasting fundraiser, and we'd come from across the hall where we had peeked into the maximum security cells. I've never liked it over there, but I went with my group, and then we came into this room to hear the tour guide tell us about